The morning light poured softly through the curtains of a small, cozy home, where laughter often filled the rooms. For Lily, a 32-year-old single mother, the sound of her 5-year-old son, Jake, playing with their golden retriever, Buddy, was the melody of her life. Their house wasn't big, and life wasn't always easy, but it was full of love, the kind of love that made every day feel special. Buddy wasn't just a pet, he was family, a 6-year-old golden retriever with soft golden fur, kind brown eyes, and an almost human-like understanding of the world around him. Lily often joked that Buddy had the soul of a gentle guardian angel sent to protect both her and Jake. She had adopted Buddy when Jake was just a newborn, a decision she'd made on a whim after seeing the timid puppy at a rescue center. From the moment they brought him home, Buddy and Jake had been inseparable. Over the years, Buddy grew into his role as Jake's protector and best friend. He followed the little boy everywhere, whether it was out in the yard to chase bubbles or to the couch for an afternoon nap. Lily had often watched Buddy curl up beside Jake as he read bedtime stories, his head resting protectively against Jake's small legs. "You're his shadow, Buddy," she'd say with a smile. "What would we do without you?" For Lily, life felt secure. She worked hard to provide for her little family, balancing the demands of her job with the joys of motherhood. Buddy's presence had always been a source of comfort, a constant reminder that she wasn't alone. The quiet loyalty of the gentle dog gave her strength on days when she felt overwhelmed or tired. But as peaceful as their lives seemed, something was about to change. Buddy's instincts would soon uncover something Lily couldn't see, something she would never have imagined, and when the truth was revealed, it would leave her shaken to the core. Lily didn't know it yet, but Buddy was about to prove that the bond between a boy and his dog was more powerful than anyone could ever comprehend. It all started with a soft whine. Lily didn't think much of it at first. It was a typical evening in their small home. Jake had finished his dinner and was tucked safely into bed, his stuffed bear tucked under one arm and Buddy curled up nearby, as he always was. Lily sat in the living room, enjoying a rare moment of quiet with a cup of tea and her laptop, catching up on work emails. That's when she heard it. A faint, high-pitched whine coming from the hallway. She paused, tilting her head toward the sound. "Buddy?" she called softly. The whining stopped. After a moment, she shrugged it off. Maybe he just wanted to go outside or had heard a noise outside the house. She made a mental note to let him out before heading to bed herself. The next morning, as Lily poured cereal into a bowl for Jake, she noticed Buddy was unusually quiet. Normally, the big golden retriever would greet her with a wagging tail, hoping for a morsel of food or a quick scratch behind the ears. Instead, he sat near Jake's bedroom door, staring at it intently. "Buddy, come here," she called, trying to get his attention. He turned his head briefly but then returned to watching the door, his ears alert. "Mommy, why is Buddy staring at my room?" Jake asked through a mouthful of cereal. Lily smiled faintly, trying to hide the unease bubbling in her stomach. "I don't know, sweetheart. Maybe he's just being silly." She walked over to Buddy, crouching beside him to scratch his soft fur. "What's up, boy? You're acting strange." Buddy let out a small soft whine and turned his head back toward Jake's room, as if trying to tell her something. That night, Lily tucked Jake into bed and kissed him good night. "Sleep tight, my love," she whispered, brushing the hair from his forehead. As she closed the door behind her, Buddy stood in the hallway, watching her with his deep, knowing eyes. "Don't start this again," she muttered half-jokingly as she made her way back to the living room. But within an hour, the whining began again, soft, insistent cries that floated down the hallway. Buddy was at Jake's door, sitting stiffly, his eyes focused and anxious. Lily sighed, feeling a pang of concern she couldn't shake. Something about Buddy's behavior didn't sit right. It wasn't like him to act this way, especially 2 nights in a row. "What's going on with you?" she murmured, watching as he gave the door another soft scratch. She brushed it off once more, trying to convince herself that it was nothing. But deep down, she knew Buddy wasn't the kind of dog to act without reason. Something was wrong. She just didn't know what. By the third night, Lily couldn't ignore it anymore. Buddy's behavior had become impossible to brush off as restlessness or boredom. As soon as she tucked Jake into bed and closed his door, Buddy stationed himself outside, sitting stiffly with his ears perked and eyes locked on the wood grain, as if expecting something to emerge. The whining started again, soft at first, but as the minutes passed, it grew louder, tinged with urgency. Lily put down the book she had been trying to read and sighed. "All right, Buddy. What is going on?" she muttered, pushing herself up off the couch. She walked into the hallway to find Buddy sitting exactly where he had the night before, his tail still and his body rigid. "Buddy, come on, boy. Let's go to bed," she said gently, patting her leg to encourage him. Instead, Buddy let out another low whine, his gaze never leaving Jake's bedroom door. He pawed at the base of the door softly, his nails making a faint scraping sound against the wood. Her unease deepened. This wasn't normal. Buddy wasn't the type of dog to act out or misbehave. He'd always been calm, steady, and in tune with their household rhythms. Something was bothering him, something Lily couldn't see. She opened Jake's door quietly and peeked inside. Her son was sound asleep, his small body curled under the blankets, the glow of his nightlight casting soft shadows across the room. Buddy immediately pushed past her, padding into the room with his head low and nose twitching. He circled Jake's bed twice, sniffing the air as if searching for something before sitting by the foot of the bed and staring at Jake. Lily frowned, whispering, "Buddy, what is it?" The golden retriever looked up at her with those soulful, worried eyes, let out another faint whine, and turned his gaze back to Jake. The sight sent an unexpected chill through her. Something was off, and Buddy knew it. Walking over to her son, Lily sat gently on the edge of the bed and placed her hand against his forehead. He felt warm, but not feverish. Jake's breathing was even, his chest rising and falling steadily beneath the blankets. Everything appeared fine. "See, Buddy? He's okay," she whispered, though her voice sounded less certain now. "Let's go back to bed." Reluctantly, Buddy followed her out of the room, but as soon as she shut the door, he sat right back down in the hallway. The whining resumed within minutes, like clockwork. Lily tried to sleep that night, but the sound of Buddy's cries kept pulling her awake. Around midnight, she finally gave in. Grabbing her phone, she typed in a search. "Why is my dog whining at night near my child's room?" The results were varied. Dogs picking up on nightmares, sensing changes in routine, or detecting illness. The last one sent a jolt through her. Illness. "No," she whispered, shaking her head and setting the phone aside. "It's nothing. Buddy's just being weird." But she couldn't shake the unease pressing on her chest like a heavy weight. What if Buddy was sensing something? Dogs had been known to detect things humans couldn't: low blood sugar, seizures, or even cancer. The thought lingered as she lay staring at the ceiling, listening to Buddy's persistent whines. She wanted to believe everything was fine, but deep down, a part of her was already afraid. Buddy knew something was wrong, and soon Lily would have no choice but to face it. By the fourth night, Lily's exhaustion had caught up with her. The combination of Buddy's incessant whining and her own growing worry left her tossing and turning until well past midnight. Each time she closed her eyes, Buddy's cries would pull her awake again, the sound filled with urgency she couldn't ignore. "All right, that's it," Lily muttered as she sat up, shoving her blanket aside. Her patience had frayed to its breaking point. She found Buddy once again sitting at Jake's door, his body tense, his ears alert. He let out a soft, low whine as she approached, looking back at her with those deep, worried eyes. "Buddy, what is wrong with you?" she said, exasperated. "Why are you doing this?" Buddy didn't move. Instead, he turned his gaze back to the door and whined again, louder this time. Lily hesitated, her frustration melting into concern. The house was dark, the only light coming from the small lamp in the living room. Everything was still, but the tension in Buddy's body was almost contagious, as though he were trying to tell her something and she wasn't listening. Finally, she gave in and opened Jake's bedroom door. The familiar glow of his nightlight bathed the room in soft golden light. Jake was sleeping soundly, his small chest rising and falling in rhythm. But Buddy pushed past her again, padding straight to the bed. This time, he didn't just circle it. He sniffed insistently at the blankets, then sat beside Jake and whined softly, his nose nudging at the boy's hand. "Buddy, stop," Lily whispered, moving closer. "You're going to wake him." But as Lily crouched next to the bed to pull Buddy back, something caught her attention. Jake's breathing. It was different, shallow, unsteady. She froze, leaning closer to her son. The color in his face wasn't quite right either. He looked pale, almost gray, his skin damp with a faint sweat. Panic shot through her like a lightning bolt. "Jake?" she whispered, placing her hand against his cheek. It was cool and clammy. "Jake, baby, wake up." Jake didn't respond. His breathing remained faint and uneven, his body limp. "Jake!" Lily's voice trembled, her hands shaking as she lifted him into her arms. His head lolled slightly against her shoulder. Buddy barked suddenly, a sharp, frantic sound that echoed through the room. The urgency in his bark mirrored Lily's growing terror. "Buddy! Oh my God!" she choked out, her voice barely audible. She rushed out of the room, clutching Jake tightly, her heart pounding in her ears. She grabbed her phone from the counter with trembling fingers, dialing 911. "911! What's your emergency?" "It's my son," Lily cried, her voice breaking. "He's not responding. He's breathing. Something's wrong. Please, you have to help me." The dispatcher's voice was calm and steady, guiding her through the next steps as she held Jake close, tears streaming down her face. Buddy stood beside her, barking anxiously as if urging her to act faster, his eyes locked on Jake. "Help is on the way," the dispatcher reassured her. Minutes felt like hours as Lily sat on the floor, holding Jake, whispering soft prayers through her tears. Buddy sat protectively beside them, his presence both a comfort and a reminder of his desperate attempts to warn her. When the paramedics arrived, Buddy's barking grew louder, as if demanding they hurry. He followed them closely, watching as they checked Jake's vitals, his ears flattening when they said the words Lily didn't want to hear. "His blood sugar is dangerously low." Lily's heart shattered as the realization hit her. Buddy had known. He had been trying to tell her for days, and she hadn't listened. If not for him, her son might not have made it through the night. As the paramedics carried Jake out to the waiting ambulance, Buddy followed closely, his soft whines filling the air. The look he gave Lily was clear. "I did everything I could." And he had. Buddy had saved her son's life. The ambulance lights reflected off the darkened windows of Lily's house, flashing red and white as the paramedics carefully loaded Jake inside. Lily sat beside him, her hands clutching his small one, her heart heavy with both fear and guilt. Buddy paced at the foot of the ambulance, barking softly as if to say he wasn't leaving until he knew Jake was safe. "Don't worry, ma'am," one of the paramedics said reassuringly. "Your dog did good. It's a miracle he alerted you when he did." Lily nodded numbly, her mind replaying the last few nights over and over. She had brushed Buddy off as restless, even scolded him for his whining. How had she not seen the signs? She looked down at Jake, whose color had begun to return, though his breathing remained shallow. The reality of how close she'd come to losing him hit her like a wave. At the hospital, doctors worked quickly to stabilize Jake. After what felt like hours, Lily was allowed to sit by his bed, holding his hand and watching him sleep peacefully. The doctor's words echoed in her ears. Your son had a severe hypoglycemic episode. It's common for blood sugar levels to drop dangerously low without warning, especially in growing children. Your dog likely sensed the change before it became critical. Lily glanced at the doorway, where Buddy sat patiently, as if understanding he wasn't allowed too close but still refusing to leave. She smiled faintly through her tears. Buddy saved him, didn't he? The doctor nodded. Yes, he did. Dogs have an incredible ability to sense changes in body chemistry, sometimes even before machines can detect it. If he hadn't woken you up, the outcome could have been very different. The words hit Lily hard. She swallowed the lump in her throat and motioned for Buddy to come in. The golden retriever padded over immediately, his tail wagging softly as he rested his head on the bed near Jake. He let out a low, contented whine, his eyes locked on Jake's sleeping face. You knew, didn't you? Lily whispered, running her hand gently over Buddy's fur. You were trying to tell me, and I didn't listen. Buddy licked her hand softly, as if to say it didn't matter. He had done his job. Hours later, Jake's eyes fluttered open, and he smiled faintly at the sight of Buddy watching over him. Hey, Buddy, he croaked, his small voice barely audible. Lily felt tears spring to her eyes again. He's been here the whole time, sweetheart. He made sure you were okay. Jake reached out a shaky hand to pat Buddy's head. Good boy, he whispered. At that moment, Lily realized just how extraordinary their bond was. Buddy hadn't just been a loyal pet. He had been Jake's guardian, his protector, and their silent hero. The guilt in Lily's chest lingered, but it was overshadowed by overwhelming gratitude. Buddy had saved her son's life, and she would never take him or his instincts for granted again. The next day, Jake was stable and recovering well in his hospital bed. The color had returned to his cheeks, and his smile, though small, lit up the room. Buddy lay curled up at the foot of the bed, his tail thumping lazily against the sheets every time Jake reached out to touch him. To Buddy, the hospital room wasn't strange or intimidating. It was where he needed to be, watching over his boy. Lily sat in the chair beside Jake, holding a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. Her eyes were puffy, evidence of the tears she had shed the night before. Each time she looked at Buddy, curled protectively around her son, her heart swelled with emotion. She couldn't stop replaying the events of the past week. Buddy's whining, his refusal to leave Jake's door, his desperate attempts to wake her when things had turned critical. She hadn't listened. Not at first. A knock at the door startled her. Dr. Morgan, Jake's pediatrician, stepped inside, holding a clipboard and smiling warmly. Good news, he said. Jake's glucose levels are back in the normal range. We'll monitor him for another night, but you should be able to take him home tomorrow. Lily let out a shaky breath, relief washing over her. Thank you so much, Doctor. Dr. Morgan turned his gaze to Buddy, who lifted his head and met the doctor's eyes as if he understood every word. This dog of yours, Dr. Morgan began, shaking his head in awe. What he did, sensing Jake's low blood sugar, is something we usually only see with highly trained medical alert dogs. It's truly remarkable. Lily glanced at Buddy, who had laid his head back down on Jake's feet, his golden fur rising and falling with his steady breaths. We never trained him for anything like that, she admitted softly. He just knew. That's instinct, Dr. Morgan said. Some dogs have an incredible ability to detect even the slightest chemical changes in humans. Buddy may not have been trained, but his bond with your son gave him the instinct to act. You're lucky to have him. Lily nodded, tears stinging her eyes. We are lucky, she whispered, reaching down to scratch Buddy's ears. Jake stirred and opened his eyes, glancing down at Buddy. Mommy, Buddy's the best dog ever, he said sleepily, a small smile spreading across his face. Lily smiled, brushing Jake's hair back. He really is, sweetheart. He saved you. Buddy gave a soft, satisfied huff, as if he already knew. In that quiet hospital room, Lily realized something important. Buddy wasn't just a pet. He was family, a protector, and their silent hero. And because of him, Jake was still here. The thought filled her with gratitude so deep, she knew she could never repay him. But Buddy didn't need repayment. All he needed was what he already had: their love. The following day, Lily and Jake were finally allowed to leave the hospital. Jake, though still weak, beamed with excitement as Lily wheeled him to the car. Buddy trotted proudly beside them, his leash loosely held in Lily's hand, as if he knew his mission was far from over. "Ready to go home, Buddy?" Lily asked softly as she glanced down at the golden retriever. Buddy's ears perked up, and he gave a gentle wag of his tail, his watchful eyes never straying far from Jake. The drive home was quiet but filled with relief. Jake dozed in the back seat, and Buddy sat beside him, occasionally nudging Jake's shoulder with his nose, ensuring all was well. Lily caught glimpses of Buddy in the rearview mirror and smiled faintly. It was hard to believe how close she'd come to losing Jake, and how Buddy, without hesitation, had saved him. When they arrived home, Buddy's demeanor shifted instantly. He was back on familiar ground, darting out of the car with renewed energy. He trotted up the front steps and turned to wait for Lily and Jake, his tail wagging as if he were ushering them inside. Take it slow, kiddo," Lily said, helping Jake into the house. She set him carefully on the couch with his blanket and favorite stuffed bear. Buddy immediately climbed up next to Jake, curling into a protective ball against his legs. Jake ran his fingers through Buddy's soft fur, sighing contentedly. "Thanks, Buddy," Jake murmured softly, almost as if he understood the magnitude of what the dog had done. Lily watched them from the doorway, her heart swelling. It was impossible to miss the bond between her son and Buddy, something so pure and instinctive it went beyond words. For so long, she had seen Buddy as just a loyal family dog, but now she realized he was far more than that. He was Jake's guardian, a quiet protector who had understood the danger before she did. Over the next few days, Lily monitored Jake's health closely, following the doctor's advice to prevent another episode. Buddy rarely left Jake's side, his golden form a constant presence wherever Jake went. Whether the boy was playing quietly with his toys, napping on the couch, or coloring at the kitchen table, Buddy was there, his watchful eyes taking in every movement. "You really are his guardian angel," Lily whispered one evening as she sat beside Buddy, watching Jake sleep soundly. She scratched his ears gently, tears pricking her eyes. "I don't know what we'd do without you." Buddy let out a soft sigh, leaning into her touch, as if to reassure her, "I'll always be here." And Lily believed him. She knew now that Buddy wasn't just a dog, he was family, and he had already proven he would do whatever it took to protect them. Over the following week, Lily found herself watching Buddy with new eyes. Every little movement, every sound he made now seemed significant. His bond with Jake was unmistakable, but now she understood there was more to it than loyalty. Buddy had a sense of awareness that was beyond her comprehension. Jake was recovering well, back to his cheerful self, though Lily was diligent about his meals, ensuring his blood sugar stayed stable. Buddy, as if knowing his role wasn't done, shadowed Jake everywhere. He lay at Jake's feet while the boy played with his toy cars, followed him to the kitchen during snack time, and curled up by his bed at night. If Jake so much as shifted under the covers, Buddy's ears would perk up, and he'd inch closer to the bed to make sure all was well. One evening, as Lily sat on the couch with Buddy curled up beside her, she found herself researching medical alert dogs. The stories she read sent chills through her. Dogs detecting everything from seizures to drops in blood sugar, sometimes even before their owners realized anything was wrong. Lily glanced down at Buddy, his golden fur gleaming softly in the lamplight. "You've been doing this all along, haven't you?" she murmured, running her fingers through his fur. "You're just special." Buddy tilted his head slightly, as though he understood. The thought brought a smile to Lily's face, but it also made her think about what could have happened if Buddy hadn't been there. The guilt still gnawed at her. How close she'd come to dismissing his behavior as just whining. She thought back to all those restless nights and how desperate Buddy must have felt trying to warn her. Determined to never miss the signs again, Lily picked up her phone and made a decision. The next morning, she called a local trainer who specialized in medical alert dog certification. "I think my dog already has the instincts," she explained on the phone. "He saved my son's life, and I want to make sure he has the training to do it again if he needs to." The trainer's voice was warm and encouraging. "It sounds like your dog has incredible intuition. With the right guidance, we can help him refine that skill." As Lily ended the call, she looked at Buddy, who was stretched out peacefully on the rug, his eyes half closed but his ears alert. "Looks like you're getting a promotion, Buddy," she said softly, smiling. "You're going to be Jake's hero officially now." Buddy lifted his head, his tail thumping against the floor as if to say, "I already am." The day Buddy's training began, Lily was nervous but excited. Jake, sitting cross-legged on the floor with Buddy's leash in hand, seemed just as eager. "Are we teaching Buddy to be a superhero, Mom?" Jake asked, his bright eyes focused on his loyal friend. Lily smiled warmly, brushing Jake's hair back. "He already is, sweetheart. We're just going to help him get even better at his job." The trainer, a kind woman named Karen, arrived at their home that afternoon with a bag of supplies and a gentle smile. "It's clear Buddy already has the instincts," she explained, kneeling to scratch behind Buddy's ears. "What we're going to do now is fine-tune his natural abilities and teach him how to communicate more clearly with you when something's wrong." Lily nodded, listening intently as Karen explained the process. She learned that medical alert dogs use scent, subtle chemical changes in the body that humans can't detect, to sense when something is off. "He's already proven he can pick up on Jake's hypoglycemia," Karen added. "With a little structured training, he'll be able to alert you faster and more effectively." The first few sessions were simple but eye-opening. Karen introduced Buddy to a series of exercises that reinforced his instinct to alert Lily whenever something was wrong. Using cotton swabs scented with drops of low blood sugar samples, she taught Buddy to react, whining, barking, or nudging Lily, until he received her full attention. Buddy picked up on the training quickly, as though he'd been waiting for someone to show him how to use his gift. "See, Mom?" Jake said excitedly one day, as Buddy nudged Karen after catching the scent. "Buddy really is a superhero." Lily laughed softly, tears brimming in her eyes. "He sure is," she whispered, watching Buddy wag his tail proudly. As the weeks passed, Buddy's skills became sharper. He could detect subtle changes in Jake's scent before symptoms appeared, warning Lily before a dangerous drop could occur. At night, he no longer whined aimlessly. He would come straight to Lily's bedside if he sensed even the slightest irregularity. For Lily, the change was life-altering. She no longer went to bed filled with the anxiety that had haunted her since that terrifying night. Instead, she had Buddy, a loyal partner who was always watching, always protecting. One evening, after a particularly successful training session, Lily sat on the floor with Jake and Buddy, pulling them both into a hug. "Thank you, Buddy," she said softly, her voice trembling. "You saved Jake's life once, and now you're making sure he's safe every single day." Buddy gave her a soft nuzzle in response, as if to say, "That's what I'm here for." And Lily finally understood that Buddy had been more than a hero all along. He was family, and he was Jake's guardian in every sense of the word. The transformation in their lives was nothing short of miraculous. Each day, Lily found herself amazed by Buddy's growing abilities. What had once been frantic, inexplicable whining was now a clear, reliable warning system. When Buddy sensed Jake's blood sugar dropping, he would nudge Lily with his nose, his alert persistent but gentle. If she didn't respond quickly, he would escalate, barking or pawing at her, until she checked on Jake. It was as though Buddy had found his voice, and Lily had finally learned to listen. Jake, too, seemed to understand just how special Buddy had become. He proudly told anyone who would listen, neighbors, family members, even strangers at the park, about his superhero dog. "Buddy is my best friend," he would say, his small hand patting Buddy's golden fur. "He keeps me safe." One afternoon, Lily sat on the back porch with a cup of tea, watching Jake and Buddy play in the yard. Jake was running around with his toy airplane, his laughter echoing through the air. Buddy followed close behind, trotting along happily, his eyes never straying far from the boy he had sworn to protect. For the first time in weeks, Lily felt a true sense of peace settle over her. The fear that had gripped her since that terrifying night at the hospital had begun to fade. Buddy had become more than just a companion. He was a lifeline, a protector who never let his guard down. The sound of a car pulling into the driveway pulled Lily from her thoughts. It was Karen, the trainer, who had come for another follow-up session. She stepped out of the car with a smile, her gaze immediately landing on Buddy and Jake. "They look happy," she said as she joined Lily on the porch. "They are," Lily replied, her voice filled with gratitude. "And so am I." Karen watched as Buddy stopped playing suddenly, his ears perking up as he turned his attention toward Jake. The boy had paused mid-run and was standing still, looking a little disoriented. Without hesitation, Buddy trotted over and pressed his nose against Jake's side, then barked twice, short and urgent. Lily was on her feet instantly. "Jake?" she called, her heart skipping a beat. She hurried into the yard, her voice calm but firm. "Are you okay, sweetie?" Jake nodded weakly, rubbing his eyes. "I feel kind of funny, Mommy." Lily knelt down and pulled the small glucose meter from her pocket, a habit she had picked up after the hospital scare. Buddy stood patiently beside her, watching closely as she pricked Jake's finger and checked his levels. Sure enough, Jake's blood sugar had dipped below normal, though not dangerously low. Thanks to Buddy's early alert, they had caught it in time. "You're okay, sweetheart," Lily reassured Jake, handing him a juice box from her bag. She ruffled Buddy's fur with her free hand. "Good boy, Buddy. You're amazing." Karen smiled warmly, watching the scene unfold. "You know, it's incredible," she said softly. "He's not just a medical alert dog now. He's family, and he takes his job seriously." Lily laughed lightly, wiping a tear from her eye as she looked down at Buddy. "He always has," she replied. "I just didn't know how special he was until now." Karen nodded. Some dogs are born with a gift. Buddy's one of the rare ones. As they walked back to the house, Lily glanced over her shoulder at Buddy, who was now lying contentedly on the grass next to Jake. The boy had resumed playing, his energy already returning, but Buddy's eyes never left him. It was as if the golden retriever knew his job was never done, not while there was someone to protect. That night, after tucking Jake into bed, Lily sat on the couch with Buddy curled at her feet. She ran her hand through his soft fur, her voice gentle. "You saved us, you know that?" Buddy looked up at her, his deep brown eyes calm and knowing. He let out a soft sigh, resting his head on her lap as if to say, "That's what I'm here for." Lily leaned back, feeling more grateful than she ever had before. For so long she had thought Buddy was just a loyal pet, a playful companion for her son. But now she saw him for who he truly was, a hero, a protector, and the guardian angel who had changed their lives forever. Months had passed since that terrifying night when Buddy first saved Jake's life, and their little home now felt different, safer, warmer, and filled with gratitude. Buddy had become more than just a dog. He was Jake's guardian in every sense of the word. His watchful eyes and gentle nature provided a comfort Lily never knew she needed. Life settled into a new rhythm. Every night, Buddy would climb onto Jake's bed, curling up at the boy's feet as if standing guard. His presence gave Lily peace of mind, knowing that Buddy would alert her if something was wrong. Whenever Jake stirred or mumbled in his sleep, Buddy's ears would twitch, and he would nudge Jake gently to ensure everything was fine. One evening, Lily sat at the dining table, watching Jake work on a drawing while Buddy lay stretched beside him. "What are you working on, sweetheart?" she asked. "It's a picture of Buddy," Jake replied proudly, holding it up. In his simple, childlike scrawl, the drawing showed Jake standing hand in paw with Buddy, a big red heart above their heads. "Because he's my best friend, and he's a hero." Lily's heart swelled with emotion. She knelt beside Jake and wrapped her arms around him. "He really is, isn't he?" she whispered. Jake nodded seriously. "He's the best dog ever. He keeps me safe." Later that night, as Lily tucked Jake into bed, Buddy climbed up and settled into his usual spot. Lily stood in the doorway for a moment, watching the two of them. Jake was already drifting off to sleep, one small hand resting on Buddy's golden fur. Buddy's eyes flickered toward Lily, calm and knowing, as if to say, "I've got this." "You're our angel," Lily whispered, tears glimmering in her eyes. "I hope you know that." Buddy's tail thumped softly against the bed in response. For Lily, the fear that had once kept her awake at night was gone. In its place was trust in the dog who had saved her son, who had proven time and time again that his loyalty knew no bounds. Buddy wasn't just a pet, he was family. And no matter what the future held, Lily knew one thing for certain. Buddy would always be there, watching over Jake, forever by his side.